Now, not only do we have to master the art of listening, we also have to master the art of listening assertively. Jack Canfield, a well-known author and speaker, brought us this famous equation: E plus R equals O. Now, translated, this means event plus response equals outcome. The event can be anything: an emotional feeling, a coworker's comment, a crazy driver, a confusing email, a layoff, the weather, your partner's behavior, well, anything. In other words, anything and everything that is outside of your control to change. The response is challenging for many people. Regardless of what unfolds in your life, you are in the driver's seat. You have the freedom to choose how you will respond. Your response is your choice. There are 3 components to your response. They are your thoughts, your emotions, and your behavior. Too often we start by trying to change our behavior before we have our thinking process lined up. Understanding your common emotional triggers can give you a blueprint for how you typically respond to certain events. It's important to note that response is the root word of responsibility. And you know what that means, right? It means that you must be 100% willing to take responsibility for your response. I like to make this comparison. If 1 plus 0 equals 1, then E plus 0 equals E. Here's what I mean. Any event combined with a 0 response leaves you with, well, the event. This principle teaches that in any given situation, the person receiving the message is equally responsible for listening assertively. This means listening to the speaker's message without getting emotional, without judgment, without preconceived notions of what the speaker means, and without taking the message personally. Have you ever been in this situation? You're walking down the hall at work when you bump into Bob. You start the "Good morning, how are you today" conversation, bombarding Bob with all sorts of information about what you did over the weekend. You call yourself trying to be nice. And instead of engaging in conversation with you about what you both did last weekend, Bob snaps at you and says, "I really don't have time to visit right now." Bob just became an event. Now, if you're like most people, you immediately jump to a conclusion that Bob is rude or mad at you or hard to communicate with, and you placed 100% of the communication responsibility on Bob. "I was just trying to be nice," you say. So now, Bob's event plus your emotional response equals what outcome? Stress, tension, your hurt feelings, gossip to other coworkers, and possibly even Bob getting called into his boss's office and being told he needs to be nice to people. Well, what if Bob received bad news that morning? What if Bob just got chewed out by his boss for visiting too much? What if Bob is behind on work and simply didn't have time to visit? What if Bob is a task-driven personality and simply doesn't believe it's right to stand and visit on company time? Isn't it interesting that we never jump to those conclusions, only that Bob is a jerk, rude, and mad at us? Let's rewind that story and see what happens when the recipient takes 50% responsibility for this communication. Same event, Bob snaps at you and says, "I really don't have time to visit right now." This time, you as the recipient take responsibility for your response. This time, you say to yourself, Bob doesn't seem to be having a good day. I shouldn't have gone on and on about my weekend activities. You don't take Bob's response personally. You don't allow your emotions to influence the conclusions you jump to. Be the bigger person and simply respond by saying something like, "Sorry, Bob, didn't realize you were rushing. Hey, have a good day." It sounds easy enough, and it is, until you allow those pesky emotions and insecurities to get in the way. By thinking and listening more assertively, you will become better at hearing people out without interrupting, staying unemotional in stressful or conflict situations, and not taking messages or behaviors personally. The recipient of any communication can be an assertive listener just by applying the Q-tip method. Quit taking it personally.